Hey, welcome everyone. So today, the topic for discussion is how to nail the customer problem statement. So before we get into the details, let me start with a quick introduction about myself. So my name is Rashi Gupta. I have done my engineering and also completed my MBA from IIM Bangalore. I have around 11 years of experience in different aspects of product management, growth, and product marketing. Currently, I come from a non-tech background, have not been into coding, but got into product management, driven by my enthusiasm and passion for solving customer problems. The key domains where I have worked across in the past are e-commerce, payments, and telecom. Currently, I'm working as a senior product manager with Amazon. Prior to that, I have worked with different startups in their early growth phases and like really had a tremendous journey and learning opportunity across each of them. So today I would be sharing some of my learnings which I had in the past and in the current experience with all of you, and hope that you can benefit from the same. So just quickly getting started, we'll quickly spend some time on the agenda which we will be covering today. So while we get into the customer problem statement, I just quickly want to cover some of the basics, quickly touch upon the basics of product management, who should be looking for a career in product management, how to build a successful product, and then getting into the details of why is the customer problem statement important and how to arrive at the customer problem statement, right? So without further ado, let's get started. So basics of product management. So who is a product manager? As a product manager, the key responsibility of a product manager is one, identifying the core customer needs, the business objectives, defining those needs in a fashion which tech can understand, defining the vision of your product, creating the roadmap, and then rallying a team to achieve the vision. So product manager works across understanding the customer needs with the objectives of the business in mind, and translating those needs into simple product requirements or user stories, which could then be understood by tech for development of the product. At the same time, working closely with UX team in terms of identifying the customer problem, in terms of working for designs for your specific product, right? So as a product manager, you get an opportunity to work across different teams. It's majorly in a lot of organizations, it's an individual contributor role till you reach a specific level when you start managing a team of product managers. So while you are responsible for working with a lot of teams, you would not have direct authority over them. And I think that's also one of the key skills which you need to build as a product manager. So who should become a product manager? I often get asked this question that, I currently am not from a tech background. Will that be a challenge? Or what are the key skills which one should have? Or how can I prepare to be a product manager? So I think one key skill, if I have to just answer it in one simple line, basically, if you are really passionate about solving a real customer problem, I think this is an area specifically for you, and you should, try and get into this area and make a career in product management. Uh, the other skills, there are specific roles in organizations which do require certain tech knowledge, but a lot of them are coachable, and while you can learn them through trainings, through videos, etc., but I think one of the key skills which really needs to come from your heart is the passion for solving a real customer problem. In my experience, I see product management not just as a career opportunity, but also as a way of living, where you're always looking at things with a curious mindset, trying to see that how you can further improve it, solve a real problem which you are facing, or your friends are facing, or the society at large is facing. And I think that mindset helps you succeed in this career. Some of the key skills which help you in the journey as you go along is one, dealing with ambiguity. So as a product manager, I think you would not really know that what your customers are looking for. You would not even know that whether the solution which you're proposing, it's even technically possible, There would be challenges like regulatory requirements, which could come in the way of, implementing a specific solution, or there could be challenges in terms of finding the impact, like what could be the impact of the problem which you are trying to solve and the solution which you are trying to implement, right? But as a product manager, you need to learn to deal with this ambiguity and work in an ambiguous space with different stakeholders, and trying to answer these questions, right? So while it comes with its own challenges, I think it's also gives you a lot of freedom, wherein you can define your own path and then succeed as a product manager. Another key skill is influencing without authority. As I had mentioned earlier, it's majorly an individual contributor role. And despite being an IC role, you need to work with a lot of stakeholders across different teams whose goal might be very different from the goal or the objective which you are trying to achieve. And then influencing those people without any authority over them, I think, is a skill which you acquire as you grow in this career. And some people definitely are blessed with this specific skill, but don't worry. I think if you don't have it, we can definitely learn it along the way. Another key skill which we need to be mindful of is making the right trade-offs. I think when people who specifically just start their career in product management, they, out of excitement, you always want to, build the best solution for your customers as fast as possible. But in that hurry to, build the best for your customers, I think sometimes you end up delaying the product, or shipping out a product which probably is not perceived well by customers. So I think making the right trade-off, starting small and experimenting and failing fast, I think is a better approach in terms of building a product versus, solving and launching all the product features you would want to offer to your customers in the beginning, and then later realizing that, you missed the bus, or probably customers are not even reacting to the solutions which you have built, right? So it's always good to start small, make the right trade-offs in terms of what needs to be a priority at that point in time, and that skill really helps. The fourth one is basically have rationality over rationalizing. So before I explain about it, I would like to share a quote from Adam Grant. So this is one of my favorite quotes about rationality and rationalizing, and let me quickly read it for you. So the world needs more rationality and less rationalizing. So rationalizing is searching for justifications after you have reached an opinion or a decision, while rationality is seeking the best logic and data before you commit and staying open to changing your mind. So I think often as human beings, we tend to rationalize where, we have arrived at a solution and then work backwards from the solution, trying to justify the solution, trying to come up with the customer problems. And that's where, that's a trap where you, as a product manager, basically might end up creating something which no one needs. And as a PM, I think one of the key skills which you need to acquire and need to build is having always a rationality mindset, where you're always seeking to find the best logic, trying to validate your hypothesis with data before start building the product. And I think that's also very critical when you're trying to identify the customer problem, that you start with the customer problem backwards and not a solution backwards. Also, you are open to changing your own hypothesis which you had in the beginning, because as you go deeper and try to understand your customers better, you might realize that that's what your customers are seeking is probably very different from what you had started with. And as a PM, I think it's always critical that you start with this rationality mindset versus trying to rationalize your own decisions. So with that, we'll move ahead. So I'll quickly summarize some of the key steps which can help you build a successful product, right? So first important step in building a successful product, while it's in 9 points which I have shared here, as a PM, in my experience, for most of the products which you will build, you will probably use 5 or 6 of this specific steps. Also, it's not important, that you follow it in the same hierarchy. Some of them could happen in parallel, but it's a good guidance to guide you to start thinking in the right direction. So first step, and which we will cover in detail in the coming slides, is basically defining the customer problem. So quickly touching upon that, I think the key step here is basically narrowing down to the customer cohort which you want to go after, being very open to understanding the customer problem rather than working solution backwards. Listen to customers. There are multiple methods of research, etc., which we will cover in the coming slides, and leverage those to understand the customer insights, their pain points, which they are facing in their journey today, and try and get as much as data, so that you, whatever insights which you've gathered or directional data which you've gathered, you are able to validate those insights through data. So that's and we'll cover more details about it going further. So identifying solutions, the key guidance or the key learnings which I would like to share here is basically that when you look for solutions, you need not always rely on your own judgment to find the solutions. And solutions can actually come from anywhere. It could come from your customers, it could come from your sales team, it could come from your business teams, it could come from your tech counterparts. And so be open to looking for solutions. It's not necessary that the solution has come from you as a PM, but what is important is identifying the right problem and then finding the best solution. So always look for opportunities to interact with different peoples and identifying different solutions, get diverse viewpoints, which will help you narrow down to the best solution possible. Now, how to identify that, which solution is probably the best for you? So always another good approach is evaluating the opportunities and risks, not just for the solution, but also for the entire product which you're planning to build, right? So the key things which you need to take care of here is, one, you could look for what's the current market opportunity or the market size. Who are the other players in the market? What's their market share? How is the overall market growing? What's the size of the segment which you want to go after? What's their share in the overall pie? And how do you see that? How do you see that opportunity grow in the future? So these are some of the key questions which you can answer. Another area which you need to look for is the cost benefit analysis, right? What's the cost of building this product, right? One is the development cost, and then there could be other business costs as well, of providing the specific solution to your customers. So listing down all the cost heads, also listing down all the benefits which this specific product will provide to your organization. These benefits could be immediate benefits in terms of revenue, or new customers which are acquired. And you also need to look at the long term benefits, and it becomes very critical to look at the long term benefits, which is the customer lifetime value or the potential benefit which you are going to derive from this specific product, say 1 year down the line, or 5 years down the line. So always try and forecast that benefit, because that will tell you, that becomes specifically critical when you're trying to prioritize between two specific products, whether you should pick one over the other. And sometimes the cost of not building something is much higher, while the immediate benefit which you see might be lower, but the cost of not building it in the future might be much higher, because the lifetime value which that product feature would have brought in terms of customer stickiness, or in terms of the long-term revenue which it could have driven, right? And hence it's always good to see the long-term benefit along with the immediate benefit when you are evaluating the cost benefit. Also look at the risk in terms of, are there any regulatory risks? Are there any other risks which you need to overcome, and try and find those solutions. The next step is basically, once you have identified the problem and you've identified the opportunity size, the first thing which you should do is writing the product vision. And vision should be something which is not very narrow or very immediate. Always try and build a vision which probably, how your product should look like, say 3 years or 5 years down the line. And what, keep it short, keep it simple in one line, that what your product vision, what do you see your product achieve, help customers to, 3 years down the line. And in terms of then defining the roadmap, I think one good approach to defining the roadmap is define the minimum viable product or the MVP and define the North Star experience. So I'll quickly spending some time here. So minimum viable product is the basic product which you need to build in order to achieve the task which you're trying to achieve. So once you have defined the MVP, and once you have defined the North Star, which is the ultimate stage where you would want your product to reach, which will help solve all the customer problems in the best possible way, right? And also bring a lot of customer delight. Then in between, you can use different prioritization frameworks and build the roadmap and phase the entire product into different phases. There are multiple prioritization frameworks. One good framework which you can use is always create a customer journey. Look at the different steps which the customer takes in the entire journey. Across those across each step, list down the different capabilities of the features which you would like to have. And further, you can bifurcate them using any methodology like say Moscow, which are must have, should have, could have, or won't have. And then between those features, if there are more than one features which you want to build in a specific section, you can always use any other prioritization framework, say the cost or benefit analysis, the impact versus effort estimate analysis, to prioritize among the different features. The next step, which is in terms of prototype and test. So between 7 and 8, you can always choose to either launch the MVP and then track performance, or prior to that, do a small prototype and test it with customers. The 7 becomes even more relevant when you are trying to build something which is a very high tech intensive project and would require a lot of tech effort. So before you actually get into the tech effort, it's good to at least do a prototype and dipstick check in terms of whether how well it's received by customers. uh, so uh, um, uh, and especially when you're trying to change the customer behavior, I think the steps become even more critical. So otherwise, if it's a small enhancement which you are doing, or it's less tech effort project, I think you can always launch with the MVP, track real-time performance, and then decide whether you want to keep the product, kill it, or how to scale it further. So yeah, so these are the 9 steps, and now we will get into the details of how to define the customer problem. Uh, so I would like you to spend a minute here in reading these two quotes. So Charles Kettering has said, "A problem well stated is a problem half solved." Another quote, a very good quote from Albert Einstein, which I really like, is, "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and only 5 minutes thinking about the solutions." But in actual life, I have seen, and probably I have also been a victim to basically doing it otherwise, wherein I spend only 5 minutes in the identifying the problem and 55 minutes in the solution. But I think that's one key area which I've learned the hard way, that we need to be very careful about. That the most critical step once we decide to build a product is being able to identify that customer problem. And these quotes are majorly to help you understand the gravity of the need for being able to do that. So why is the customer problem statement important? Understanding the problem is the most important to building a successful product, as this is going to be the sole reason why customers will buy your product or use your product. There have been multiple scenarios, and if you look at any product failures, I think the key area where they had failed is in defining the customer problem. And some of the common mistakes which we as product managers make is spend less time on identifying the problem, jumping into a perceived solution directly, thinking solution backwards. And I think this is the most common one, wherein once we have thought of a solution, we are only trying to rationalize and justify that solution by trying to look at data or VOCs which just point to that specific solution, and we get too biased by that solution versus looking at the actual customer problem. Another key pitfall is thinking technology backwards. When we and this is, I think, becoming more common today. When we come across some latest innovations in technology, we get too excited in terms of providing as fast as bringing it and rolling it out as fast as possible for our customers, without really thinking that is that technology even required. Does it even solve the customer problem which we are trying to solve? And I think these are some of the key questions which we need to ask. ourselves when we are trying to define the customer problem statement. So rather than thinking technology backwards, always try and think customer backwards. One more area of pitfall, which always happens very often, is thinking competitor backwards. Sometimes when we see our competitor launching something, just in the midst of actually a product roadmap, we might just change our entire vision now and the roadmap to incorporate that without even thinking and diving deep into it, whether it's even required or not. And I think that while it's not bad to look at competitor, right, because it might even have a very significant impact on your business, but at the same time, becoming blind by just going competitor backwards without even trying to understand the customer problem is a key pitfall, and which we should be careful of. Whether we are trying to think solution, technology, or competitor, we should always first go back to the drawing board and try to clearly define that what is the customer problem. Then these different points like solution, technology, and competitor will only help us further refine the solution and what we offer to our customers versus becoming a blocker in the entire product development process. So how do we arrive at this customer problem statement? The first step of this is we need to identify who is the customer. I think one common mistake which we make here is taking a very broad segment in terms of defining who is the customer. We need to go as granular as possible in terms of defining the customer. Like for example, if you're trying to define the customer for an auto insurance product, we might just say that anyone who has a car or a bike is our customer, but that might not be true. Look, you should think that which is the industry which you are in. For example, you are only trying to offer online insurance, then you need to narrow it down to customers who actually also have an internet connectivity, who are also performing other tasks like shopping for other categories online. Then you maybe also need to look at specific cohorts in terms of what are the customer behaviors in terms of making such a high value purchase. Who are the customers who are more comfortable and risk averse in terms of making such an purchase? The next step in terms of identifying the customer problem statement is defining the customer, understanding the customer journey, their needs, motivations, and the pain points. For this, I think there are different research methodologies which we will cover in the upcoming slides, which will help you understand the customer journey and what are the key problems which they face in actually taking that journey. The third key thing which you need to do henceforth is basically define those customer problems by writing it down and making writing it down sharply in terms of what are the actual problems which the customer is facing. There could be one problem which you're trying to solve for, there could be multiple problems. Again, I think the next step, which is basically leveraging quantitative and qualitative data to validate the customer need, will also further help you narrow it down that what are the most pressing problems which the customer is facing, in terms of which were probably which garnered the maximum responses, which were raised by the maximum number of customers, which had this maximum share among the different problems which you had listed down in front of customers, in terms of ranking, in terms of selection. And hence you should narrow down to the most pressing customer problems which you've identified in the existing customer journey. So going step by step in terms of identifying who is the customer, I think one key area where we often tend to miss is that we will probably look at one of these three specific segmentation methodologies in terms of defining our customers, either just looking at demographics or only behaviors or only attitudes. But I think a more comprehensive way of looking, which will help you narrow down to the right customer segment, is looking at all three across, like the customer requirements across all the three segmentations. what is the demographics of your customer, the age, gender, income, region, etc., whom you want to go after. What are their existing behaviors in terms of product usage, the frequency of usage? What are the other products which they currently use? Are they consuming any specific kind of content? Do they have any specific uh, behaviors or hobbies which you can go after, and use that to identify, are there any trends in terms of device ownership? Are there any trends in terms of any other data point which can help you identify the right behavior? The third uh, area of segmentation which you need to look after is the attitudes of the customer. And I think this is even more subtle and becomes even more relevant for the success of a product. For example, what is it that customers value the most, in terms of using that product? Because these are the key motivations which will actually drive them to use your product, and these are the key uh, uh, psychological behaviors which will actually also prevent them from using a specific product. That what is it that they value the most, right? Whether it's trust, whether it's convenience, what are their underlying motivations in terms of using a specific product? So looking at all the three, demographics, behaviors, and attitudes, I think we need to arrive at a holistic customer need-based segmentation. And once you have done that specific segmentation, define that which is the cohort which you want to go after, either basis the market size, either basis what competition is, which segment competition is going after, either basis the need which you want to address, the product which you want to build, the market which you want to build, and which specific segment aligns most with the product which you want to build, right? So basically doing a more holistic customer need based segmentation versus looking at only specific segments, like only demographics, behavior or attitude. I think so that's the key thing to keep in mind while we are narrowing down to who is the customer cohort which you want to go after. Now, how do you understand the customer journey, their needs, motivations, and pain points? So there are two key channels which you can leverage to get this data. Again, it depends on the phase of the organization. For example, if you're a startup, probably you will end up spending a lot more. You will need to rely a lot more on external channels versus internal channels for this data. And now, in terms of external channels versus if you are an organization who has been there for a certain time, has a significant user base, then you will have the opportunity to validate your hypothesis, which you have generated using external data, using the internal data from your customers. So the different methodologies which you can use to collect this data to identify the customer needs, their journey, is one. In terms of external, so shop along is nothing but basically in terms of, for example, if a customer is shopping in uh, a mall, right, and then you're just accompanying the customer and observing them, that what are they doing in their natural behavior while they're shopping. So that's the shop along in a physical world. But if you have to replicate in the virtual world, basically it will be nothing but basically you give a problem, a situation to your customer, and then let them naturally do the task in the way they would have done it, and observe them, that what are their pain points which they're facing, are there any frictions, are there any problems which they're facing in the entire journey. So that's basically a shop along, in trying to define the problem statement, or in trying to define the task for the customer, make it as natural as possible. For example, instead of saying that you need to buy a phone, or make it more natural that your say it's your 10th wedding anniversary and you have decided to gift a mobile phone to your spouse, so how will you go about it? So trying to make it as natural as possible so that you are able to get the right insights. Ethnography is another area where you observe, it's a qualitative area of research where you observe customers in their natural environment. It takes a lot more time and energy, and but it becomes especially important and helpful when you're trying to go after a niche where you have limited information available. I think that's one good area of research which you can leverage. In terms of in-depth interviews, I think in-depth interviews are should be done as a follow-up of a shop along. When you have already observed customers in their natural environment, I think you can leverage in-depth interviews to further um, understand their motivations, understand the key pain points which they faced in the journey while you had observed them. So get more clarity into their thinking. While you can also do that independently, but when accompanied with a shop along, I think it really gives you the right insights. Another area of research which you can leverage is focused group discussions. This is specifically useful when you have limited time and you want to collect feedback quickly from different customers. So you can always go ahead with a focus group discussion. The another area is calling customers. If you have a ready list of customers available, and if you're trying to seek insights into a very specific area, or because you might not be able to answer a lot of questions from your customers or go into a lot of details, but when you're trying to get insights into one specific area, I think calling customers can really help. Surveys, so the above listed methodologies can help you generate hypotheses, give you a direction in terms of what are the real customer needs. But surveys is another methodology which you can use to actually quantify the hypothesis and get more quantitative data on the insights or the hypothesis which you have built using the above qualitative research methodologies. So surveys is another tool which I would suggest should be accompanied with one of the above qualitative methodologies. Another question which I often get asked is that what is the right sample set which you should look at when you're trying to collect this data? So in my experience, any sample set of between 15 to 30, more in the range of between 20 to 30 is a good sample when you're trying to get qualitative feedback and qualitative data. Because after 20, you will start noticing that, the insights become repetitive. But that again is with a caveat that, you are specifically going after a customer cohort which is very similar. If you want to go after different customer cohorts, I think you should do a sample of at least 15 to 20 for per cohort. But if you're specifically looking at one specific cohort of customers, a sample of 20 to 30 customers gives you the right directional insights. You can leverage those insights and then run surveys on top of that. And for surveys, a good sample set to go after would actually be somewhere between 300 to 800 responses. And anywhere close to 800 to 1000, I think, is pretty good, significant responses which you've received, and to draw insights in terms of the direction which the customers are moving in, and in terms of customer preference. So there could be a lot of nuances in terms of surveys, how to build good surveys, which you can find on the internet, and definitely leverage those insights in terms of reducing any biases which could come in while you're creating these surveys. In terms of the different internal tools which you can leverage to gather this data, so one is your own customer analytics. Leverage the internal analytics which you have collected about your customers to validate the different hypotheses, to understand their pain points, where are they dropping off in the entire journey, are they taking longer to complete a task. Try and find benchmarks either within your industry, or if you can get any benchmarks from your historic data, try and get those benchmarks and then compare against those. That is a customer taking longer to complete one specific task versus the others, or are more number of customers dropping off at one specific point versus the other. So a lot of these insights would really help you identify that what are the pain points which they are experiencing in the entire journey. Heat maps is another good methodology which will help you understand that how the customer journey is progressing across your website. One key area which I always suggest people to look at is the customer service contacts data, because your customers tend to reach out to you when they have a specific issue or they are facing a specific problem. So it's very rich data in terms of really understanding the customer pain points when you listen to these customers. Another area which you need to look at is the on-site feedback loops, and it becomes very critical for a existing product, that when you're trying to leverage, get more insights into it, and further improve it, try and build these feedback loops where you have an opportunity to collect real-time feedback as much as possible in the entire journey on the website, through simple ratings, reviews, multi-tier questionnaire where the customer can share the feedback, that what worked for them, what did not work for them. Also, it could be in the form of post feedback once they've completed the journey, in terms of sending them notifications and emailers to collect their feedback, or calling them to collect their feedback. But I think the most significant one is when you're able to connect on-site feedback at the point where customer is actually taking that specific journey and can share their insights. Another area where you can try and look for data is the sales team, since they work very closely with customers, and it becomes very critical, especially in B2B products, where you can understand the key pain points from your sales counterparts. So defining the customer problem. So here I have shared two examples of a poorly written customer problem statement and a well-written customer problem statement. So if I look at the first example and read it, right? So customers need voice-enabled search because it would allow them to search faster without typing. So this statement, why do we think that it's poorly written? One, it mentions the product, right? So we are trying to think solution backwards, and does not elaborate on a challenge that your customer is facing. It does not narrow down to who is our customer. It does not provide me any data in terms of how do I know that this is the customer need. Now, if I look at the second example, new customers from tier 3 and tier 4 cities find it difficult to type the name, which leads to incorrect results and a percentage of customers dropping off from search, versus, say, a different percentage of customers from tier 1 and tier 2 cities. So why is the statement well written? Is one, because it narrows down to a specific customer cohort. It identifies the problem in detail, and also validates the need with the data, right? I think these are some of the key elements which we need to be mindful of while defining a customer problem statement. Start with who is your customer, what is the problem which you are trying to solve, what is the impact it has on the customers, and how do you know that this is the impact it has on its customers. So I'll just quickly share two frameworks which you can use for creating a customer problem statement. So this is one framework which can be leveraged in terms of defining a problem statement. So today my customers, a specific cohort, define that who that cohort is, while trying to do a particular task X, faces challenges. Like challenge, it could be one challenge, it could be more than one challenges, right? Due to what is causing that specific challenge to come in the journey, and what is the impact of that specific challenge which leads to XX customer impact and a specific business impact. And how do you know that this is the impact which it is causing? So share the data or the insights which you've gathered from your internal data or the external research which you had done to validate that need. Another good practice in terms of writing the customer problem statement is always sharing a couple of customer anecdotes, especially anecdotes on problems which were very frequently repeated by customers and are common across the customer cohort which you want to go after. So it's always good practice to share at least one or two anecdotes from customers, which really makes it personal and help the end user understand the real customer pain point. Another framework which you can use for creating a customer problem statement is the who, when, what, and how framework, right? So start with who is experiencing this problem, which is defining the customer cohort. when and where is the problem occurring, right? And the entire journey, maybe the problem is occurring at a specific touch point. So define that where and when is the problem occurring. What is the exact problem or the pain point which the customer is experiencing? And what's the impact it has on the people who are experiencing this problem? And what happens if we don't solve it, right? So once you have defined these, I think it will give you a good insight into the customer problem, the impact it has, and also what's the cost of not doing it, right, for your customers. And last, basically, how do we know that they are experiencing this problem? And I think it's uh, uh, a critical step into one, validating your hypothesis which you have generated through the top 3 questions. That how do we know that these customers experiencing the problem? You will need to collect a lot of data through the different sources which we had discussed. But once you have this in place, I think it will give you a clear understanding of the customer problem statement, the problems which the customers are facing, and it will help you build solutions which are scalable, which would be loved by customers, and which would find the right product market fit. So with that, I would like to end the discussion, and thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much.